everybody, and welcome back to a brand new edition of KerVAM, a Doctor Who podcast where, well, I feel like we kind of just talk about anything Doctor Who related nowadays, especially when we normally talk about physical media, but there isn't any. So maybe there will be. I'm sure there'll be another collection Blu-ray. Given we've recorded this, there'll probably be one announced tomorrow. I mean, I wouldn't complain, but maybe there will be. Or animations or something, but, you know, there's not much else to talk about at the moment. So we're looking to the past of Doctor Who, doing different episodes and different things. If you missed it last time, check out our episode where we discussed our best and worst of the classic series, with some fairly surprising choices, I think. Probably not so much for best, but some of the worst ones were slightly surprising, I would say. But today we're going to tackle New Who, discussing our top 3 best and 3 worst Doctor Who stories of the whole of New Who, the first 13 series. And I think it's going to be really fun. And I, of course, am joined by my 3 co-hosts, Charlie, Bill and Ryan. Charlie, have you got any spicy picks in there today, do you think? Have you got anything that's going to really stir the pot a little bit?
Nothing overly groundbreaking in the worst list. There's one item in my best that I feel maybe a bit controversial, but as far as New Who goes, I'm afraid I'm quite basic. Sorry.
That's okay. I do feel like my New Who list is a bit more standard than my Classic Who list. I felt like that was a bit. I don't know quite why that is. Maybe there's just less of a consensus on the classic series. I don't know, but I just feel like when I was writing it together, I'm like, people are probably going to kind of think, yeah, fair enough on all of those. I don't know. I think it's quite interesting. Ryan, how about your picks? Are you happy with them? Do you did it take a while to really nail down on them?
It was a little bit challenging, but I think I pretty much my top 3 and bottom 3. I think I might have a controversial pick for best and maybe worst, depending on. Well, we'll have to wait and see what we get.
Yes, we will find out very soon. We're going to crack on with it a bit quicker than last time, so you will find out very soon. And Bill, have you had fun putting together this list? Did you have to watch any episodes to remind yourself, or do you just go on your memories and a bit of research?
It's kind of a bit of both. So I've been watching all the stories for 60th, every single day.
Yeah.
So I'm only up to, I think I literally just watched Voyage of the Damned today, so I'm not that far into the new series at the minute. So a lot of like Moffat era and Chibnall era stuff is more based on from last time I watched some of them 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah. So like I put some at the some of these I've chosen. Next time I watch them could change. They could go up in my estimations or go down. I don't know. I'm just working off what I can remember.
Yeah. I feel like that's always the thing with Doctor Who, though. I feel like the next time I watch, I'll say these 6 episodes, 3 that I hate, 3 that I love, and the next time I watch them, 2 of them I'll probably actually go, now I really like it or really don't like it. I feel like it's just we're ever changing in our opinions when it comes to Doctor Who, and that's probably a good thing. I feel like it keeps it interesting when you suddenly realise, oh wait, that episode I thought was terrible for 10 years is actually quite good. So yeah, it's good fun. So I feel like how we're going to do this, we're going to tackle the worst first, because I feel like it's good to end on a good note. So I feel like let's all go round and share our 3 and 2, and then we'll all share our number 1s. I feel like we're going to keep this quicker than last time, but I feel like that's the best way to do it, because we want to reveal the number 1, at the end of the section. I feel like that's the key thing. So Ryan, we'll start with you today. If you bring us your number 3 and 2, and for any honourable mentions, anything that didn't quite make the list as well, for your 3rd and 2nd worst new Doctor Who stories, the floor is yours.
Okay. Ooh, here we go. Well, first off, right off the bat, Love and Monsters is not on this list because...
Correct decision.
We watched it again a few months ago. It's not that bad. I find pretty cringy, but honestly, I could see what they were trying to do with that, and I'm like, you know what? You attempted something, good on you, but stories that I feel like were more deserving but didn't quite make the list include stuff like Fear Her, Timeless Children, Saranga Conundrum.
Is that your list? Told us your list.
That could very easily be your list, I think.
Yeah, just easily just other just bad ones. Even the long game, I'm just find painfully boring and all that. So, but all of them didn't quite make the list. So starting off at number 3,
Yeah.
I don't know if this might go, maybe isn't, but my number 3, Nightmare in Silver.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
do not like this story. I think it is the worst story of the Matt Smith era, and it's quite possibly my least favorite Cyberman story. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's this or the Timeless Children, who knows? Because Timeless Children is not really, even though previous stories attempted to build as a Cyberman story, Timeless Children, it didn't really end up being, which was a shame.
Timeless Children, essentially the Cybermen is more of a Cyberman's part, and then I feel like Timeless Children isn't really about the Cybermen at all. They're just kind of there.
And with the Nightmare so I think that's the most crushing thing about it's a Neil Gaiman written story about the Cybermen, and it just falls flat. It feels, and I think Neil Gaiman has gone on record saying that a lot of it wasn't what he had in mind, and you can definitely tell that watching on screen. Nothing about it really works. Warwick Davis is trying his best, but I don't think even he, as good as he is, even he can't liven this story up. I think the kids were annoying, especially that young girl. I thought she was very inconsistent throughout. Clara, was just whatever in the story. The Cybermen weren't really that well portrayed, and worst of all, I think it's possibly Matt Smith's worst performance. For some reason, I don't think he's very good in this.
Do you think he's any good as when he's playing like the Cyber Planner? Do you think he's good in that role?
I don't think he works either, controversially, because when he's been the Doctor, I feel like he's been too goofy. I think because Series 7 for me, Matt Smith was kind of a mixed bag in Series 7, because there are times where he's brilliant, but there are times where they just made him way too goofy for some reason. I feel like I felt that with both the Crimson Horror, and especially I felt more so in this, where he just feels a bit too goofy. It just comes off way too camp and silly, which is not what he's supposed to play, like the collective consciousness of the Simon. I feel like it would have worked much better if he downplayed it, if he just made it more like cold and sinister and scary. I would have bought it more, but instead it's just the complete opposite. I'm just like, you're no different than the Doctor, basically. It's just, it doesn't really work. And yeah, I know it has its fans. I'm just not one of them, I'm afraid. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. That's fair enough. I probably wouldn't put it that extremely low, but I definitely isn't anything, that I'm not going to rewatch it by choice, is probably the way to put it. It's only a marathon one that I'd ever watch that again. Anyway, sorry, carry on. Give us your number 2, Ryan.
My number 2, I might be cheating a bit on this one, but these two episodes just feel like a two-parter anyway. So
two-parters are allowed, I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna go for it. It's Survivors of the Flux and the Vanquishers.
Okay.
It's basically a two-part finale, with Survivors of the Flux being the setup and Vanquishers being... Well, Survivors of the Flux is all the exposition, and Vanquishers is attempt at wrapping things up. And I feel like a lot of what we don't like about Chris Chibnall's era, a lot of it is seen in these two episodes. To the stuff doesn't really matter, like Yaz and Dan and Jericho's globetrotting across the world. That doesn't really amount to anything, really.
It's the most pointless plot point. That whole stuff with Yaz and Dan and Jericho goes absolutely nowhere, doesn't it? It goes to the point of them creating a sign that he wouldn't even be able to see or something. I can't even remember. Like, it was completely pointless.
Yeah, it's like they're wasting time. They never really explain the assassins that are trying to hunt the dam. Are they working for the Grand Serpent? Aren't they? The whole stuff with the Grand Serpent.
All pointless.
Interesting, is it? Yeah, pointless. Even though it was interesting seeing him infiltrate Unit, it doesn't really amount to anything, because he's just basically a figurehead for the Sontarans. And even then, I feel like they weren't really that impressed. I did enjoy them in War of the Sontarans. They just feel like such an afterthought. like, oh, we need a world-ending threat for the world. Oh, let's just bring back the Sontards again. And then, of course, Swarm and Azure end up being just generic, bland villains, really. They're just Simshar 2.0, basically. That's what they are. And the whole thing with the Doctor and Tech Taeyun just doesn't work at all because it's just exposition. You don't get a sense of history. It doesn't really work. And it shows why the Timeless Child was such a bad concept from the get-go because of one of the reasons, because of how it ended up resulted in these two parts, because this is meant to be like the culmination of that. And it doesn't really work, really. It's just no sense of history, just all exposition. And it shows why I feel so very bad for Jodie Whittaker, because every time I see with the Jodie Whittaker era, it can basically sum up in just two words: wasted potential, because she's a really good actress. And I feel like for a lot of the time, she's just saddled with endless exposition. And just the and I feel like that's what's getting in the way of her becoming a really good Doctor. And I feel like at least two episodes perfectly shows that she's just saddled with endless exposition, and the few moments, and I mean very few moments, when she isn't saddled with exposition, when she's just interacting with her companions in a normal way, it shows how great she can be. But unfortunately, for a lot of the time, it's just not a very good ending to Flux, really. And Flux was kind of already a bit bumpy, a bit up and down, but I feel like these last two episodes especially was when it just all came bash.
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, I think it's a good set of choices. I feel like, I think they're all fairly fair enough. I feel like we're all going to include some 13th Doctor stories in here, unfortunately. As much as we probably wish we didn't have to, I feel like it's going to be inevitable. So, Charlie, I'm going to come to you next. I'm sensing there's going to be at least one 13th Doctor story in your bottom three. But hit us with your 2, 3, and honourable mentions.
All right. So, in third place, it is a 13th Doctor episode. It's Battle of Ranskoor Av Kolos.
Yeah.
It's horrendous. There's nothing here that's good. I mean, with Graham and the whole moral dilemma, like, does he kill the villain? That's something, I guess. It's a thing. It's a character interaction, and I don't think the other two really have those. It's just, I don't get it right. It Takes You Away was the episode before this. I kind of liked it. Like, it wasn't great. I thought it was all right though. You had the end, the second part of the 2-part finale. I thought, what's it going to be? It's going to be something cool. The Daleks, the Cybermen, the Master, and it's a frog, and then it ends. And then you just get this story. If it's even a story, it's just everything bad about the Chibnall era is just within this, really. Just, I can't remember what happens in it. There's just, I couldn't tell you the plot of this.
There's the Ux. Do you remember the Ux? Aren't they like an immortal being or something? Aren't they?
That's a thing.
And Chris Chibnall just loves random names, like space names, like that, doesn't he?
Yeah, and like even Jodie Whittaker, who I do think is a good actress, I don't think she's great here, to be honest. Not because she is bad inherently, but she just doesn't have anything to work with. Just the companions are also so flat and just bland through and through. I mean, Graham has got his little something, and he's definitely the stuff later on. But for now, they just have no person else. And at this point, I think even the Doctor is. I think it's the only finale in New Who that I wouldn't even consider is actually a finale, purely because you can place it anywhere within the season and it would still work. There's no sense of closure like there is to every other season. Like, even classic Who, you have some seasons where it sort of ups the stakes for the final story, like season 15, 16. It just, this, you could literally place it episode 2, episode 5, episode 8, it would still work.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, I've got my spreadsheet here with all the ratings I've given, and I've got this 13 out of 100. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. 1.3 out of 10.
Yeah. it's dreadful.
The
Second
fact there's
place,
2 worse than this is pretty impressive.
second place, we have 10 out of 100. It's The Vanquishers, and I know Ryan, you obviously lumped it as a two-parter. I just kept this as one because I think Survivors of the Flux is slightly better, in the sense that at that point there was still a tiny bit of hope.
Yeah, there was like
here,
potential in it with all the stuff about the alternate universe or something with Tecteun and stuff that just didn't ever actually go anywhere.
Yeah, like in episode 5, you've still got like they could still sort of save something for episode 6. Like it could still be saved, but at this point, you just what's he doing? Like you basically said it all, Ryan. It's just nothing. No plot thread goes anywhere. We still don't really know anything about what happens. Like who actually is the Grancer? There isn't really anything. It's just kind of really bad. I guess Jodie Whittaker is less like, she has a little bit more to work with here, I suppose. Like she's definitely, I mean, and the companions, I guess, are slightly less cardboard cutouty than series 11, but even then it's just still more questions than answers. And the even worse part is we don't even care about the answers. We just sort of want it to end and to go on to RTD2.
Yeah.
I know, at that point it had been revealed that Rusty Davies was coming back, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was before Flux.
Yeah. So, while I was watching this, I just thought, when is RTD coming back?
And when we were watching it, it's nearly 2 years away. It was over 2 years away.
Yeah, exactly. And now we're nearly there. We're 4 months from the 60th, so that's something.
Yes.
And we've even got titles. So, yeah, you basically said it all, Ryan. The Vanquishers is pretty awful.
At least the universe was sort of saved, I guess.
By a piece of dialogue that is not very clear at all.
Yeah, and as well, you still have like the only part of the universe left is just our solar system. Like that's never really resolved.
Yeah, I think apparently there's some line of dialogue that somehow explains that the universe, I think, is back to normal. But I don't ever remember taking it in when watching it, whether it's in that or it's in either the Daleks or something. I can't remember. I feel like there's a line that sort of very vaguely suggests that everything is normal again, because it's the only way Doctor Who kind of works again, is if everything's normal. So handle that.
So that's my 2 and 3. About your Nightmare in Silver Pick, Ryan, I do think it's fair enough. I don't hate it as much. Like it would probably be, if I had a look at all of these ratings, it would probably be bottom 10. It's pretty bad, but like, there are a few worse than I think. All right, on to one of you two, Elliot or Bill.
Yeah, Bill, come on, give us your hit then. Your 3 and 2.
Right. Well, we're in an interesting position because my number 1 has already been said.
Ooh.
So,
and you know what?
Tell us which. Don't tell us which.
So is mine.
Oh dear.
So there we go.
Mine hasn't.
So we're going to choose the same story all over again.
Like last time.
Yeah.
Right then, come on, Bill. Hit us with your 3 and 2.
Yeah. Right. We're going to start off a really good episode here. I would say, there's a lot of it's a Rusty Davies era episode. Okay. Now there are a lot of those episodes that you could say, like Love and Monsters is not a bad episode, but has got some weird stuff going on, especially towards the end.
Yeah.
But I think this one is honestly the worst of that era, and that is New Earth.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I feel like it's kind of what you were saying earlier about the Battle of Ranskoav Kolos doesn't feel like a finale. I feel like New Earth doesn't really feel like a series opener. I feel like you could just slot it anywhere into series 2 and it would work so much better as a fairly a throwaway sort of episode, essentially. It would have been much better to just start off Tooth and Claw or something like that instead. I think it's not like everything about New Earth is terrible. I think the final 5 minutes of it is okay, where Cassandra's in Chip's body and they go back and yeah, that's kind of like a nice kind of way to end the episode. But beyond that, it's just your classic body swapping stuff, which has been done to death in various sci-fi before and since. And I mean, it's not like the worst idea in the world, but it's just not handled very well, and it just doesn't. There's just it's not like they're really doing anything new with it. It's just yeah, I would say it's the cast is fine. There's no necessarily bad performances, but it's just there's yeah, I would say it's just a rare sort of like dud in the Rusty Davis era, ultimately. Number two, now moving into the Moffat era. Now I have a feeling that Ryan might say that I'm being a bit too harsh on this.
Oh, right.
Sleep No More.
That's understand. Actually, no, it's understandable. I don't think it's awful. It's just very bland.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, I mean, it's like the main reason for why I dislike it is because I remember going to I think it was 2015 Doctor Who Festival they had in London.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the days there, they showed a clip of Sleep No More because that was the next episode that week. Yeah. And I remember Mark Gatiss hyping it up and talking about it, and it sounded like a really good episode, and had that whole found footage aspect to it, which sounded really clever, really interesting. And then you watch it, and it was to me anyway, a massive disappointment because I just didn't feel like it was doing anything with that found footage aspect. It was just saying, oh look, here's a nice little novelty to add to this episode, and that was kind of it, which then kind of begs the question, well, why are you going to do it in the first place if you're not really going to do anything that substantial with it ultimately? And then yeah, it's just, well, I don't know, it's again, it just doesn't really work as well as it could have done. And it's like a Mark Gatiss episode, and Mark Gatiss's episodes were tended to be on the whole pretty good, but I feel like this again is a real dud of his. And the fact that he wanted to make a sequel out of this as well for series 10, yeah, that was no offense to him, but I don't really understand why I'd want to, so I'm glad we ended up with the Empress of Mars instead, because that is not perfect either, but it's definitely a lot better. Yeah, I feel like the Sandman as a monster could have been very good. And again, it's that whole classic Doctor Who thing of like turning something that we just take for granted in our everyday lives, in this case sleep, and turning it into like a threat and everything. That could be really interesting, but I don't know if it really pays off like as well as it could have done.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was at that event. It was on the day of transmission of Sleep No More. I was at the event, and Mark Gatiss did the panel, and I think he brought out one of the Sandmen on stage, and I just thought, okay, this looks pretty interesting. Can't wait for that. I didn't watch it on transmission because me and Dan were in London at the time, and we went to cinema instead to, I think, just see a film. And so it was the day after I watched Sleep No More. To be honest, and yeah, I wasn't really missing much, to be honest. It was really, I don't think it's awful. I mean, I love Series 9, but Sleep No More is not bad. It's just middle of the road to me. It didn't leave an impression. It was just like, okay, that was it, I guess. Yeah, it just didn't leave that much impression. I completely agree.
I agree. I think for Sleep No More, I like the fact that they try something different by doing found footage and experimenting. And I feel like I like it when Doctor Who tries to do something different, whether it's in the format or just a sort of a different type of plot or just something fresh, which I feel like that was, and it did bring something new, even if it ultimately probably didn't really work that well. It was a bit confusing and difficult to follow up points. And yes, I agree. I'm glad that they did not write a follow-up for it in Series 10, because No one wanted to see that. No one needed that. And New Earth, I feel like I probably should agree with you, but I feel like I'm slightly blinded by nostalgia when it comes to the first sort of series or two of New Who, just because I was there in 2006 as a 8-year-old watching New Earth on broadcast, and even though I can't remember myself watching it on broadcast, I know I didn't. I just have a real affinity for that, I feel like, and so that's why I couldn't put that in the bottom three. I couldn't put The Long Game because I don't think it's that bad, and I have a good feelings about it. But my number 3 to break that is Fear Her, because I think Fear Her is terrible. The Scribble Monster is nonsense. Like, maybe for some young kids it was kind of interesting enough and kind of cool, but like the acting's pretty poor across the board. There's not really anything particularly inspiring about the idea, the monster, the plot, or anything to do with it. I feel like Kel and his council axe is about the most entertaining part of that story. That is an iconic moment when he starts moaning about his council axe and his council van. Like, I love that stuff. But outside of that 1-minute scene, there is nothing really redeemable about it. It leaves such little impression on me in any way. It just feels a bit silly nonsense Doctor Who's fluff that I don't really ever have a desire to go back again. And obviously coming a week after Love and Monsters probably didn't help it, both at the time, I guess, and in retrospect now as well to an extent. And then obviously Army of Ghosts and Doomsday following on from it with the big finale, and you kind of felt like you wanted this episode to kind of set it up a little bit and tee it up. And apart from them looking at the stars and going, oh this lasts forever, a very foreboding, no idea what's going to happen next week based on this mysterious conversation at the end of the episode. But I don't know, I just really don't like it. I can't get involved with it. I genuinely like Russell. I genuinely like Russell's writing. I have a lot of nostalgia for the early series, but that's just one of those episodes that just doesn't hit it for me. So that is bottom. Number 3, down at the bottom. My number 2, which no one has even referenced, which slightly surprised me because I thought it had a really bad reputation, is The Doctor, the Widow and the Wardrobe, the 2011 Christmas special, which, again, I just think is terrible. I really get, like, maybe when I watched it on Christmas Day in 2011, I kind of enjoyed it, possibly. I don't know. I can't remember. But if you watch it again at all, like, nothing about it really holds up. It's all silly, nonsense Christmas stuff. Like, they kind of just wish him to be saved, and he does at the end. The pilot guy, I can't remember all their names. Alexander Armstrong, whatever character his name is. And, like, they kind of just wish and hope, and then, oh, wait, he came back because it's Christmas. And it's just... I get why they write it like that for Christmas, because, Christmas special forms a different role. But also, as an episode of Doctor Who, I really think it's very poor. I kind of liked the idea of doing, Lion the Witch and the Wardrobe style Doctor Who episode, but I think I don't really like anything about it. I think, again, the performances are really poor, I think, from the sort of supporting cast. I don't think they do a very good job. And it just feels sort of quite cheap as well. I feel like there's not that much scale to it. When you think like big magical Christmas special, but I feel like you've kind of got the big house, you've got that kind of tower that a lot of it's set in, and the robots, and I think there's a spaceship as well. And then I feel like that's kind of it, apart from a little bit of walking through snow. So yeah, all round, I just really, really uninspired by it. Even at Christmas, I'm not really going to go back to it unless I'm doing a every Christmas special marathon, I suppose, because it's just really, really disappointing. That's all I can say. Charlie.
I was going to say good, but bad picks. I was going to say the most entertaining parts of the Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe is probably the reference to Androzani. Pretty sure there's some sort of reference that they're on a certain moon of Androzani, which
yes,
I've always said is probably the best part of the episode, because it reminds you of the caves of Androzani. So
that saves it, doesn't it?
Sleep No More, what you were saying, Bill, as well. Yeah, it's an interesting concept. Like, like Elliot was saying, I like it when they do something different with Doctor Who, but it's just not good.
It just isn't, is it? There's just
no,
like, it's just not an enjoyable episode of Doctor Who to watch. It's not something that I'm going to go back to and enjoy. And I think that's the key thing about a lot of this list is sometimes it's not even whether it's written well or not. It's just, do I sit down and enjoy this episode? Absolutely not. So it's going at the bottom of this list. It's as simple as that, really. So I think it's time to fling into our number one worst episode of Doctor Who. So we're going to shoot around the room. I know for me and for Bill, they've already been mentioned. Have Charlie or Ryan, have yours been mentioned now?
Yep, it was mentioned. My number one.
Okay, go on then, Ryan. Tell us your number one. Go on.
Oh, I knew this was going to be number one, but as soon as we were on this, I knew this was going to be number one. I hated it at the time, and I still hate it now. It's the Battle of Ranskow.
Yeah.
I really do not like this episode at all. It's just, I mean, everything about it does not work. Even by the title, it does not work. There wasn't. Yes, it's set on Ranskow Coloss, but there's no battle. There's maybe about nearly 4 minutes of battle, where the rest of it is just standing around explaining the plot to each other constantly, because that's all it is. It's just endless exposition and just not very good character arcs. Like Simshar, who was a passable villain in The Woman Who Fell to Earth, is absolutely beyond just terrible in this story. And Yuck's just, well, whatever. Poor Mark Addy, who was a good actor and just is, again, saddled with exposition, and he's just wasted. They do all this thing with setting up this psychic planet, and they do absolutely nothing with it. And they set up that, as Charlie mentioned, there's companion revenge narrative at the beginning. Did nothing with that for most of the runtime, and then by the end, they just kind of do this. I couldn't really go through with it after all, and then that's it. It's just, I think that's it. Nothing really happens. Nothing really happens. It's just, I think that's the thing. It's just everything I do not like about Doctor Who, and all the stuff that drives me nuts about Doctor Who is in this. Everything, all my dislikes are in this. Just clunky exposition, poorly done characters, weak villain, and just, not very good storytelling all around. I think even Chibnall's gone on record saying this was his least favourite story.
He basically said it was like a first draft that got shot or something because he ran out of time, didn't he?
It's just fix other people's scripts. It's just, and you can clearly tell on screen. It just, not only is it doesn't work even as a first draft, it shouldn't have just been done at all. I think this should have just been scrapped. And as Charlie mentioned, you could have placed this in any order and it wouldn't have made any difference. And for me, I think this, if taking resolution out of it, it takes you away, works better as a finale, because at least like Graham's arc pays, and Graham and Ryan's arc does pay off in that. And speaking of which, it doesn't make sense that this comes after that, because if that was sort of resolving the whole Graham grieving Grace and Ryan accepting Graham as his granddad, it's weird that in Ranskow he falls back on his grief and he wants to kill Tim Shaw. He's not really over it. It's just like, but you were over it in the previous episode. So it doesn't really work structurally, and it just doesn't work, period. And you can't even enjoy it on a so bad it's good level. It's just bad.
I fully agree, because it's also my number one worst episode of New Who. And I know, I feel like it's probably one of the most disappointed I ever was watching an episode of Doctor Who. I was like, it takes you away was a lot better than most of Series 11. I'm like, okay, Chibnall's kind of getting things going here a little bit. We're going to finish on a big finale. People had rumoured the Daleks were going to turn up in this one. I know it wasn't either in Resolution, but I remember there were rumours that, they're going to slot them in at the end of this to lead into the New Year's Day special. It's going to be exciting, all this. And there was just none of it. I even did a live reaction on my channel. I don't know if it's still live on YouTube now, but I did one at the time because I thought this is going to be great. There's going to be loads to react to. So exciting. And there was just nothing. It was just like disbelief at how disappointing it was, because just so boring, so bland, so lacking in any real excitement, and all that stuff when the Earth is supposedly being threatened and destroyed by the Ux. I think it is like there's, or is it Tim Shaw? I can't remember. Tim Shaw's using the Ux to trying to destroy the Earth. It's something like that. And if this was RTD, we'd have shots of screaming people on Earth, running in terror and everything. And yet in this, it's just a shot of the Earth from space. That's all it is. There's no establishment of any threat to anybody there. And so you don't feel like it. You just don't care about it. And I feel like that's just such a key problem in a lot of Chibnall stuff, but particularly in this episode, that just really lets it down and means it's absolutely terrible. And that's why it's my number one. So that was my and Ryan's number one worst story. Bill, are you going to add it to us as well, or have you got something else for us?
Yeah. Battle of Ranscourt of Kolos.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. It's not going to be a full house. I know Charlie's gone something else, but 3 out of 4 shows, pretty clearly how bad it is.
Yeah, I don't know, because you've all pretty much said everything that I was
thinking of saying. There's probably not anything else to say, really, is there? No. We've covered it all.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel like a finale, and it's just awful. And it's just like Ryan said earlier, it just doesn't work. Coming after it takes you away, the continuity makes no sense in regards to Graham's little story arc and everything. I mean, I know it was a first draft, and therefore it's not like, Chris Chibnall intended to, for it to be as bad as it was, and he tried his best and everything, but it just shows as a first draft, and it shows that they have run out of time to really do anything with it. And it just didn't come together.
Yeah, I think we all know. Did you mention Basil, Charlie? Did you mention it in your list?
It was my number 3, I think.
Yes, so we've all mentioned it. I think we've covered it pretty well. So, Charlie, give us something fresh. Give us a new worst episode of Doctor Who.
This episode has not even been murmured in today's recording. No. It's just completely not out of the blue, because my 3 picks for the bottom 3, they're all within a 21 episode window.
Wow.
And anyone who's quick at counting will know that means it's Legend of the Sea Devils.
It's awful. Yeah, that should have been. Wow. Don't know how I forgot about that one.
It wasn't my number 1 least favorite until I rewatched it the other day. I thought, you know what? Let's give the 2022 the 2022 specials another chance.
Yeah.
Either the Daleks went up.
Okay.
Legend of the Sea Devils went down. Power of the Doctor stayed about the same. It was pretty good, a high note to end on.
Yeah.
But a relative high note. I'm not getting into it today, but it's definitely not on my best list. Legend of the Sea Devils went down. It's awful. 8 out of 100.
Wow.
I think I love the Sea Devils as villains. And Silurians, right? I think, I don't know, Chibnall sort of didn't do great with those either, but he missed the whole point of the Sea Devils. The whole idea behind the Sea Devils is they're not aliens. Their home planet is Earth. Chibnall didn't even mention that in the whole episode. He said he made the Doctor say the Sea Devils see Earth as their home planet. It is their home planet. They live on Earth. He didn't even mention it. It's not
great. Yeah,
you could substitute it for absolutely any other alien or any alien. You could Daleks, Sontarans. It would still work. That there's nothing defining the villain in this. It's just that it's just about bringing in some viewers who wanted to see the Sea Devils. That's it. It's just you know what? People have been thinking about the Sea Devils for a few years. Let's do an episode with them, and just did nothing with them. There's no redeeming qualities here, really. I guess some of the shots look kind of nice, but the story itself, it's a special, and it's 46, 47 minutes. That's shorter than most of the episodes in the era. I think it really should have been double the length, and it would actually be competent story, because it's so rushed. I feel it's one of the only Chibnall episodes that actually suffers from a lack of exposition rather than a surplus of it. We don't know what's going on.
I hope we find out one day if they did actually cut out half an hour of that episode, because I know there was a rumor of racism issues in the writing of it that meant they had to cut out chunks of it, and it feels like it because it feels very rushed. But
but they released Talons of Wing Chun on Blu-ray in 2020, so they can't have had that much of a problem.
Yeah,
they, you know, I don't know. I kind of want to see the extended cut. You know,
Yes, definitely.
if they release it on Blu-ray, you know, in the collection in like 2030 or something, we can talk about it then.
Cut.
Exactly. I would, because I think it would actually go up a lot in my estimation. Not that much, but a lot. It, you know, by comparison, if they did release an extended cut. But my issue lies with the fact that they don't use the Sea Devils. Like, it really annoyed me because I was actually hyped for this episode. I thought it would be the best of the specials. I even said in the review we did of Warriors of the Deep, which is a whole other thing, that I thought Legend of the Sea Devils would be the best and Power of the Doctor would be the worst, and turned out to be the opposite. I actually love Power of the Doctor and hated this.
There we go.
Burning passion. And
yeah,
that's why
I feel like Legend of the Sea Devils really was the surprise terrible story. Like,
yeah, definitely.
Everything suggested it was at least going to be okay, and it just wasn't.
Yeah, pretty awful. Sorry to be the outlier, guys. I know
that's okay. Yeah, I'm glad you picked up on it. I feel like we all kind of missed it. I forgot it existed, if I'm honest. I mean, it's not like it came out last year and we did like an hour-long podcast on it, but you know, so go back and check that out if you haven't already. To hear us, I feel like we did slate it at the time as well, though. I'm pretty sure we said it was terrible at the time. So
a lot. It was probably the worst. Like, it's probably the most slated story we've talked about on here, maybe besides from like Creature from the Pit.
Yeah, and given that we did the whole of Flux individual episodes, the fact that Legend was the one we slated the most, I think, says it all. So yeah, go and check that out.
Nice. We were quite nice on Flux, really. Looking back.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, maybe I feel like the Vanquishers was the main one we weren't. I felt like the rest of it we were kind of okay on, and the Vanquishers kind of killed it for us.
Yeah, I mean, 1, 2, 4 we were nice to. 3 and 5 we kind of we still had a bit of hope, but 6 we just went to town.
That was it. Yeah. Game over. Right, let's stop the negativity and let's bring ourselves onto the exciting positives of the best of New Who. We're going to do our top 3 favourite episodes. We're going to go around the room, and I'm going to start this time because why not? I never start. So I'm going to start with my number 3 and number 2. Now, I feel like this was harder. I think it was harder. I looked at some of my top episodes and I was like, I'm not sure I agree with that. So based on like my ranking I'd done before, I was like, not so sure. So stuff that was close was like, I love Magician's Apprentice and Witch's Familiar. That was really, really close just because I love that. I know, but I've always loved it. I adore Series 9 in general, and that is an absolute top tier story. What else did I have? I had the Series 5 finale up there as well, right up there. I mean, more the first half than the second half, but I feel like still it was a real, real strong story. Slightly surprisingly, maybe World Enough and Time and the Doctor Falls did not make it onto my list. That is not in my top 3, so it's literally like number 4, I would probably put it, but like not quite there. And so on this occasion, my number 3, and you know, maybe I'm just doing this, I don't know, because I'm a fan, is Day of the Doctor, because I just think it's a glorious story. I know that yes, there is a lot of fan service in there, and you know, it's not perfect, but I feel like it's just such a celebration of Doctor Who, and I'm a big Doctor Who fan, and it's full of stuff celebrating the show. I know it's kind of a celebration of 2005 to 2013, but if we put that to one side and go, actually, there is some other stuff in there, I feel like just the kind of grand nature of it is incredible. I feel like it's the closest Doctor Who gets to kind of movie level, really. I think even though it was shot, 10 years ago, I think it still looks the closest to kind of movie top tier Doctor Who of anything that we've seen even since then, because just like the budget they had, the visual effects that are involved in it, and just the whole scale of the whole thing, I feel like just really stretches it towards that level. The whole idea of the War Doctor, I think, was a great idea. I know it's basically because Christopher Eccleston didn't want to do it, but I still think it works. It's a brilliant concept that works so effectively. Having John Hurt as the Doctor is he's amazing. He was a great actor, and so it was always going to work really, really well. Of course, I would have wanted to see more classic Doctors and things involved, and they ended up in the 5-ish Doctors, and that was fun. So that's probably the only kind of negative, but just like there's so many iconic scenes throughout the whole 80 minutes that it nearly is, and just I can still picture the moment when Tom Baker turns up at the end, and just because I'm pretty sure I didn't know that was happening before I saw it. So actually that was a genuine surprise to me, because I know he'd announced it on BBC News on the day or something, I think, because that's Tom Baker for you. But just having that moment and seeing him there as the Doctor again after all these years was just, I felt such an exciting moment. And just then when when you see Matt walking around the TARDIS and then we cut to this wide shot of all the Doctors, it just felt like this is the ultimate moment of Doctor Who fandom. Like, this is amazing. And in many ways, Doctor Who kind of went, at least from a fan, like general public perspective, went downhill after that moment. I feel like that was kind of like the peak for Doctor Who's being in the mainstream of British culture and British TV and whatever. I feel like it just gradually went out at that point. But in that moment, when all those Doctors were on screen there on that shot at the end, it just felt like all of this is glorious and amazing. And so, yeah, I just really like Day of the Doctor. And, they put like the classic series titles in, or like a version of the classic series titles at the start. And then we see the policeman in Totter's Lane. And it's just, all of it, black and white to colour. It's great. I could waffle on for ages about it. And so that's number 3. Then number 2, which I debated for a long time, but I think, again, maybe it's a little bit of nostalgia, but actually I don't think anybody would really disagree with it, is Bad Wolf and Parting of the Ways. Kind of cheated with a 2-parter there, but I feel like the series 1 finale it's just phenomenal. It's phenomenal. It's so well written. It's such a great idea. It's such a brilliant way to bring the Daleks properly back into Doctor Who, because obviously we have the single Dalek in Dalek, and that's an amazing way to introduce a Dalek and the concept of Daleks. But it's almost like you kind of felt like, okay, that's the moment for the Daleks for now, we'll leave them for a bit. But then we get this finale where you spend almost the whole of the first episode not knowing it's the Daleks, if you didn't know already. Like, it's not one of those really obvious teases where, it's obviously going to be the Master, or it's obviously going to be the Daleks or the Cybermen or whatever. Like, if you didn't know from the Next Time trailer before, I feel like until like 35, 40 minutes into the Bad Wolf, you wouldn't know it's the Daleks. And then the reveal is brilliant. And I mean, I just love all like the game show stuff. I know it's pretty dated now, but I feel like just bringing Doctor Who into such a kind of real, even though it's in the future, but like a real world relatable environment, and seeing, the different companions playing these games, like Rose playing the Weakest Link, is such a seminal like memory in my mind from being a child. I feel like, I don't know, I just have for some reason, such a link to that. I just think it's all so good. And that second part, whereas so many Doctor Who finales, particularly, the second part always is a downer. Like, always gets worse in the second part because they don't know how to wrap it up, or there's some great concepts in the first episode and they toss them all away in the second part. Like, it so often happens in Doctor Who, but I feel like Russell really follows through on everything in the second part of this story, and the Ninth Doctor gets a perfect send-off that really fits him. The whole arc that he's built around this whole series is just perfectly brought to conclusion with the Doctor at the end of it, and Bad Wolf and Rose absorbing the heart of the TARDIS, and it all just links together. It makes sense. It's such a perfect kind of emotional conclusion to the series, I feel like, between the Doctor and Rose, that's just so perfectly performed, perfectly written. All of it works so well. And then, and obviously the Doctor's final scene in the TARDIS is again brilliantly written and performed. And I just feel like all of it is just a series 1, I think, is still the best in terms of a self-contained series with an arc that runs through it, all load loosely at times, but both sort of in the characters and in the plot, that it's all tied together perfectly within one series, probably because Russell knew he might only get one series, but that all just works so effectively, and it works because of the conclusion as much as anything else, and the fact it does tie everything together at the end. And it's just great. It's such a good episode of Doctor Who, so many iconic moments in it again, which I think is what so much of it is about, is like, there's so many just different scenes you can remember, like Jackie trying to drive the van to pull the heart of the TARDIS open. When the Doctor says no to the Daleks, he's going to go and save Rose at the end of part 1. Obviously, the generation scene, all of it. I love it. It's great. Go on, Ryan. Hit me with your choices, because I feel like you're going to have some good ones. Go on. I've said my piece. You go for it.
I will say, Bad Wolf and Part of the Ways I did consider, but I just found like the game show stuff in the first half of Bad Wolf just a bit, for some reason I didn't fully click that it's decent, but it just, for some reason, I'm just not that bothered really about it. I feel like if they redone it to kind of into something that was a bit more like it would fit in the tone with what was going to happen with the Daleks, and a bit more of a seamless thing, I feel like for me it might have worked a little bit better, but everything about it after that is perfect, as you said, for all the reasons you said. It's not it was close. It's not quite my favorite Russell finale. That would be The Stolen Earth and Journey's End, which I absolutely just love. And it was a contender on this. It came close, but it didn't quite. I love that story so much. I just feel like that was just really, really good. Also, World Enough in Time, The Doctor Falls, and Twice Upon a Time, I did consider putting on the list. It is my number 4. I think for me, it's the best regeneration story out of all of Doctor Who, with those 3 episodes together. The end of Peter Capaldi's run, that end trilogy, because for me, it felt like a trilogy of stories. It was just a good way to end his run. And for me, it's my personal favorite generation of all of Doctor Who, really. My number 3, and this is going to be a controversial choice, so be prepared. My number 3, The Magician's Apprentice and The Witch's Familiar.
Yes, get in.
That's my number 3. I am really convinced I am the number 1 fan of this story.
I'm the number 2 fan.
Yeah, I just love this story so much, and I knew the second I saw this story, it just resonated something within me for some reason, and everything about it, from it really works as a good character piece, character drama for even though as epic as it is and with its scale, it's really more of a character piece for the 12th Doctor himself, but also with Davros and the Master as well, Missy, and it's about the relationships with the Doctor has with Davros and the relation Doctor has with the Master to some extent. It's like a good character study for all of them. Just the sense of scale it has, it's just amazing. It really, truly blew my mind back in 2015. I was just so taken aback by it. I'm just like, wow, I can't believe this is happening. And just seeing Davros come back, for me, Davros is always my number 1 favorite Doctor Who enemy out of all of Doctor Who, really. I feel like this might be his best in modern Doctor Who. I think Julian Bleach does a phenomenal job. Michelle Gomez just really excels as this incarnation of the Master, and she's just so phenomenal. And I think this was the story that cemented for me that Peter Capaldi was my joint number 1 Doctor alongside Tom Baker. He was already great beforehand in Series 8, but it was this story and just the range of emotions he goes through, from being acting all silly to then being deadly serious the next second. When he's in Davros's chair and he's acting a bit silly with the dice, but then all of a sudden he goes completely serious and threatening to them. Is just so amazing. Just the range of emotions he goes through, and some of the lines he gets are just so iconic and so legendary. I'm just like, that was the moment I realized, he rivals Tom Baker as my favorite Doctor. It was this story that did it for me, and for that reason alone, that's why it's my number 3. Number 2 is one you've already mentioned. It's your number 3, Day of the Doctor.
Yes.
For all the reasons you've said, I remember being in London on that day, just being at the celebration at the Excel Stadium beforehand, and then just being at that convention, then immediately afterwards just going to the Cineworld in London to see it with a packed crowd, and you know how they always say about with some cinema screenings, like in America, that they whoop and cheer, like the big moment, and big movies. I had that experience with Day of the Doctor, just being with that audience. It stuck with me back then. It still sticks with me to this day. Just seeing what they managed to pull off with that story was just amazing. It's a story about second chances, of righting past wrongs and doing it in such a brilliant way, and how they use the War Doctor and is just brilliant. Everyone is just fully committed, and considering that Stephen Moffat has gone on record saying it was, for him, it was the most toughest he ever had to go through with a story, because he said that it was one of the most difficult and nightmarish things he had to do, like behind the scenes, is just prepared for it, but he said he was so thrilled and happy about the end result.
Yeah.
That it just feels like all that grueling hard work, it all paid off at the end.
Yeah.
It was just such an amazing story and one of my personal favorites to this day.
Yeah, well, I agree with that one, that's for sure. And obviously, I agree with your Magician's Apprentice, which is a familiar pick. I mean, I love Davros's classic Doctor Who DVD collection. I think that's a highlight of the first part, where he's just watching all the old clips on there. And the cliffhanger to it is amazing. Like the cliffhanger at the end of the first one. Like to do that in an opener is something we've not really seen in Doctor Who, but I guess kind of in The Impossible Astronaut, but not really. To open your series with like the ultimate cliffhanger of everybody's going to die and the world's going to end is like quite bold to start your series with, I feel like. So that's, yeah, pretty good choices.
All right.
Do you want to hit me with yours, Charlie?
Yeah, go on. All right. Yeah, firstly, Day of the Doctor is fantastic. It's not on my list. Just to clarify, but it is great. I feel slightly jealous because I, being an incredibly young person, got into Doctor Who in 2016. I was 11 years old. So it was in that gap between series 9 and 10. And I was just watching it all through then. And then Peter Capaldi's final season I just caught on to. So I was just watching this. It was on Netflix back in the day, first 8 seasons. And I was gutted when they were removed. I had to get all the DVDs. But I remember watching it and thinking, this must have been great to see in the cinema. And yeah, so I am slightly jealous of that. And Day of the Doctor is fantastic. But my number 3 is somewhat of a controversial one. It's liked, but it's not this loved, I think. Turn Left.
Turn Left.
That is a really good one.
That's a good choice.
It's
I
interesting.
didn't think about it, but that's a really good choice.
Yeah, it doesn't really have the Doctor, but that's kind of the point. It shows just how much like the Doctor impacts the world, like the Earth, for the positive. It just shows that without the Doctor, everything would fall apart, and I feel it really just sends that message just all the way. Just, they need the Doctor. It just highlights the Doctor's importance so much, and it's just everything about it is just the world slowly getting worse. It's just really well done by RTD. And Donna as my favorite new companion is just, Catherine Tate on top form. We've got Bernard Cribbins as Wilf, who's just fantastic as always. It's brilliant. I mean, I'm watching classic and New Who. I'm rewatching them kind of side by side.
Okay.
I'm on Kinder and Listen.
Interesting.
Yeah. I'm hoping to finish them by November, by the Star Beast, by the time that rolls around. But when I rewatched Turn Left, I thought, wow, this is amazing. And I found it my favorite episode in the Russell T Davies era. And so that sort of brings me to my second choice, which, spoiler alert, isn't in the RTD era. You're both in the Moffat.
Yep.
Moffat era, obviously, they're not in Chibnall. Sorry, Chibnall. World Enough and Time the Doctor Falls is my second choice.
Very nice.
If you want to include Twice Upon a Time, you can. It kind of doesn't change the fact that it's, I do feel World Enough and Time is the best part, and Doctor Falls very slightly dips, but it's still great. It's just fantastic. I mean, the whole concept of the spaceship orbiting a black hole, the time dilation between the Doctor and Bill. I mean, I'm a massive physics nerd. I love that sort of stuff. I've watched Interstellar loads of times. It's great.
I love Interstellar.
Interstellar, films. It reminded me of that when I watched it, because this was one of the first episodes I watched on broadcast. So I was so excited, and I had no idea about John Sim either.
So were you actually surprised to the end, or did you realize it early on?
I had not seen the trailer. I mean, when he started talking about disguises, like 30 seconds before, I was like, yeah, that's the master. I didn't realize it was John Sim though. I thought it was just another master,
Wow.
But then I was so happy when that revealed, and I remember just waiting the week, and it killed me. It was so hard to wait, but it was absolutely worth it. It's fantastic, and just heartbreaking at the end, really. I still find it slightly annoying because of Bill. Like, New Who just cannot kill off a companion properly.
I know.
It's got to have some sort of, like, Clara goes away in the diner, and you've got Rose separated, but then they return. Martha leaves, but she comes back. They can't properly send off a companion. Obviously, Donna's coming back. They can't do it. So that slightly annoyed me, but I don't care. This is a fantastic episode. And just a perfect send off to the Doctor. And it's even more sad that after that, there's been like 6 years of kind of subpar Doctor Who, really. I feel that's the last time I was properly, oh my God, this is brilliant, watching Doctor Who. We've had some good episodes. Power of the Doctor was the closest we've come since, definitely. And that deserves an honourable mention, not because it's my fourth or fifth, but just that Chibnall pulled that off, I think is quite impressive. And what's my fourth is The End of Time.
Yes.
Kind of controversial, but I do love The End of Time.
Yes, I love The End of Time. We should just do a podcast about The End of Time one day.
And my fifth is Listen, actually.
That's a good choice. Yeah. Sorry,
I'm halfway through it right now. It's a very different Doctor Who kind of episode, but I love it. It's just great. That's my 3 and 2. Should we go to Bill now?
Yeah, Bill, go on. Give us 3 and 2.
Right. Okay. I mean, I knew there would be a lot of discussion about how we didn't all get on well with the Chibnall era. But I have actually got a Chibnall era episode number 3.
Wow. This is a surprise.
Yeah.
Go on then.
But I would say it's worth it. The Haunting of Villa Diodati.
Yeah, that is a good one. Really good.
Yeah, I will give you that. That is the number 1 of the Chibnall era, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, I know you've got the whole problem with what comes after that with Essential Assignment, especially Timeless Children, but if you ignore all of that, it is just a great episode. It's so atmospheric, and I don't know, I feel like it kind of, as soon as we discover Ashad, the lone Cyberman, then it really takes a turn, because obviously you've got the Doctor having been warned about the lone Cyberman by Captain Jack earlier on in series 12. And then when you finally get that reveal, you really do think, well, this is really going to be, the Doctor's going to be put in a really difficult spot here. And Jodie Whittaker just acts her absolute socks off with it. And, that whole speech she does about how the structure of of her and the companions is not fluid, and sometimes she has to be the one that makes these tough decisions, and she has to be alone when doing it and stuff like that. And it really is her finest hour, I think, as a Doctor. And yeah, it's just brilliant. I'm surprised it's not been mentioned, to be honest. I feel like it tends to be quite well regarded.
Yeah, no, you're right. I thank you for bringing that one. I feel like, because you're right. I've just forgotten about it. Again, I feel like there's so many episodes of Doctor Who that are actually really good. We just kind of forget about some.
And then number 2 is Moffat era.
Okay.
And I think you and Ryan will be very pleased to hear there is another one from series 9.
Well, hey.
And that is Heaven Sent.
Yes. Thank you very much.
I mean, it was praised at the time. It still holds up well, like nearly 10 years later now.
Yeah.
It's Peter Capaldi just proving that, I didn't, cards on the table, I didn't necessarily enjoy the Peter Capaldi era, like when it first came out. But the one thing I will say about it is Peter Capaldi himself is one of the best actors to have played a Doctor, without a doubt. And Heaven Sent is like proof of that 100%, because he carries the whole episode by himself, and he does such a superb job with it. And yeah, it is literally just, when you get into the bare bones of it, it's literally just him talking to himself for 45, 60 minutes, however long it is. But that works so well because it's Peter Capaldi. If there was, not to say like the Doctor's ever been miscast, but how many actors in general could you say could just carry something like that and just make such a great job of just talking to themselves for that long? I mean, I don't think there's many other actors that you could really say that about. And so yeah, it just you can think whatever you want to about Peter Capaldi era as a whole, but Heaven Sent, I mean, it deserves all the praise it gets.
Yeah, I think we're all going to agree here. I feel like we should move on to our number ones. I do wonder if three of us have all said the same number one, except for Bill, because my number one is Heaven Sent. Charlie, is your number one Heaven Sent?
It is.
Is your number one Heaven Sent, Ryan? There we go. So I feel like let's have a moment for Heaven Sent, because we've almost all had a full house. Pretty impressive. I feel so. Three of us had Battle of Ranskarav Kolos for the worst, and three of us had Heaven Sent for the best. So
and three of us had War Games last time.
It's never a full house, never quite a full house then. So at least we have some diversity of opinion. But Heaven Sent is amazing. Let's be real. It was my favourite episode of Doctor Who from the moment that it aired. Everything about it. Peter Capaldi's performance is incredible. I think he's the best actor to have ever played the Doctor, and I think this episode proves that. It's 55 minutes of him in a castle talking to himself, and yet it is captivating the whole way through. You don't know where it's going. The gradual realization of him stuck in this endless loop and having to go through this millions and millions of times. It's so incredibly well crafted. All the hints are there for you to go back and watch it again and, realize actually, oh, this is leading up to this and this and this. It's so clever. So like I don't know how Moffat just thinks this up in his brain. Like, how does he bring that all together in his brain and get it on paper? I don't really understand. Obviously, the music plays a huge part and is amazing. It's the best thing Murray Gold ever did in Doctor Who, and I'm hoping he comes back as good again this year, because the music is also part that makes it, because Capaldi can't purely talk the whole time. You've got to have some fair chunks of silence, and so that music needs to fill it and carry it, and it totally does. And you've got Rachel Talalay directing it incredibly as well. Again, without that such interesting and unique direction that she brings to the show, I don't think it would work. So when you've got that combination of Peter Capaldi, Stephen Moffat, Rachel Talalay, and Murray Gold, it's just perfect, really. I don't think there's anything else you need. Charlie, Ryan, anything else to add?
The Capaldi era is my personal favourite era of modern Doctor Who. It's the one that resonated with me the most, and because of all, it wasn't afraid of tackling more challenging and complex themes, and not afraid to be a bit more, I wouldn't say darker, but just more mature. I feel with the Capaldi era, it wasn't afraid of being a bit more mature, and Heaven Sent is the perfect example of that. It is Moffat's masterpiece. It's Capaldi's masterpiece. It's such a really good story. It's a story of grief, really. The real enemy is grief, and it's about the Doctor learning to accept it and battle through it. It delivers on such a really powerful yet simple theme, really. It's and everything about it is so perfectly executed. Moffat said at one time that he wanted to, how he did he sort of experimental episodes that he did during RTD's era. He wanted to bring that back for Capaldi's run. Yeah. So he did one for each one with Listen, Extremis, and then this. And they're all three are really good, great examples, but Heaven Sent wins out head and shoulders above the rest. Series 9 is quite possibly my favourite season of modern Doctor Who. Yes, Sleep No More was mediocre, and Hellbent, in my opinion, could and should have been a lot better than it was, but not even that was enough to take away from the thrill, the excitement that I got from Series 9, the rest of Series 9, and especially from this story.
Yeah, exactly. And Charlie?
You've kind of said it all. I just think it's the perfect example of everything in an episode going absolutely perfectly. There's just no criticism I have with this. Like, I gave the War Games a 99 out of 100. I gave this a 100.
Yeah, it's a 10 out of 10 for me. Yeah,
just perfect 10 out of 10. It's just a masterpiece. Everything about it. I mean, The Shepherd's Boy is the best piece of music on Doctor Who, and I'd say in television, it's just fantastic. Everything about it, just the visuals, the acting, the direction, the slow, like you said, the slow realization of where the Doctor is, all the skulls are his.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, in the final speech, the whole, how many seconds in eternity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that episode was absolutely written for Peter Capaldi. No other actor could have done that. And it's just a testament that Pertwee and Troughton are my favourite two Doctors, but Peter Capaldi is definitely the best actor to be on Doctor Who.
Yeah,
it's just,
I think that's just the facts.
Yeah,
you can't deny it, and I think this episode is the proof of it, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. All right, last one.
Yeah, go on, Bill. You are the odd one out here. Share us your favorite episode.
Well, you did talk about it earlier. Although I should say, actually, this is interesting because you talking about it earlier is what made it number one.
Okay.
Because I was actually going to go with something else. I was actually going to go with the Waters of Mars originally.
Ooh.
Which
It's
I mean is top 10.
Yeah.
But then the more I thought about it, and the more you said about Bad Wolf / Departing of the Ways,
there we go.
I kind of then, as I was hearing you talking about it, I then just started to go back through it in my mind, and I was just thinking, I couldn't think of how to justify the Waters of Mars, like putting Waters of Mars against that, because it's just as you're saying, just it's the perfect way for a Doctor to go. I know kind of like the game station stuff, I understand that is very 2000s, but it was 2005, so
exactly. And we don't complain about the classic Who looking like it does from that time, so I feel like we should hold New Who in the same way.
Chris Eccleston is just brilliant as against like the Daleks and stuff. Like Dalek as well as another great episode. He's just, again, he's acting his socks off in this, and he proves that even though he only stuck around for one series, he's still worthy of being considered one of the greatest Doctors of all time. And it's just so dramatic from start to finish. And don't get me wrong, you get this sense with a lot of Russell's series finales, like Stolen Earth Journey's End, as Ryan said, is also really good. An Army of Ghosts Doomsday, that's pretty good as well. But I would say this just clinches all of them really, and just takes that top spot, because it does really feel like, as you're saying, like Russell kind of wrote it with the, not necessarily like expecting it to be just the one series, but if it had have just been the one series, then it would have been a very satisfying way for the show to kind of go off air again for a bit. And it feels like he kind of wrote that with that partly in mind anyway. And there's just across the board, just every single cast member is just brilliant, absolutely brilliant in it. And just brilliant regeneration story, and a great way for Chris Eccleston to go out.
Yeah, well, it's right at the top for me, so I certainly agree. I love it. It's just great. The whole of Series 1, everything about that series is just so fantastic. And so we've heard about many great and terrible Doctor Who stories today. It's made me want to go and rewatch about 10 different stories, so I feel like that's a real positive out of this podcast. But that is all we have time for today. So if you're watching on YouTube, then in the comments, tell us what is your top 3 best and worst of New Who, because we want to know. We'll comment and reply and let you know how wrong you are with your opinions, or maybe not. Maybe we won't be that harsh, but let us know in the comments. Or if you're listening on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, then go over to YouTube and check it out and put something on there. You can also reply over on Twitter at KerVAM Pod if you want to let us know your thoughts over there. But that's just about it from this episode of KerVAM. I don't know what we're going to be doing next time. Wait and see. It's going to be a surprise. I don't think none of us know. So, it'll be cool. It'll be fun. It'll be Doctor Who. So it'll be great. But from me, it's a thank you for Charlie, Ryan and Bill. But from me, from all of us, for now, it is goodbye.